guys are wrong. Good evening. Welcome to the West Fargo City Commission meeting for Monday, October 17th. Welcome everyone this evening, and I respectfully request that you join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. We have two amendments. I would like to offer that item 6A is a request from Fleet Facilities, Mr. Tony Silbernaller, and Mrs. Fisk will also be presenting on that request. That's 6A. And 6B is an update on the fire station by Fire Chief Dan Fuller with regard to a change order on something that we didn't have an original bid on, and we do now. So Chief Fuller will be updating us on that. That's 6A for the Fleet and Facilities request, and 6B for the fire station.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second, please? Commissioner Anderson moves.
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda with the amendments as outlined. Is there any discussion?
I have one question.
Please, Commissioner.
On item 6, the pay study, is that going to be a discussion item or an action item?
That's,
That will be an action item. Can I say that? Is that what you?
You're expecting a vote?
I'll bring it back to the table for reconsideration, and then I'd like to vote on it, yes.
during the discussion, if we deem that there's additional information that has to be gathered, we might have that conversation about whether we table it or whatever. It depends on your presentation, Commissioner. That acceptable to the group? Mm-hmm. That's how we'll address it as it comes at us. I have a motion and a second to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is the approval of the minutes of October 3rd. Emily, we've got the motions, that's because of the special assessment meetings, and that's what we got. Okay, so we have approval of minutes of October 3rd, October 6th, and October 13th. Pages starting on page 3, running all the way to page 101.
I'll make the motion to approve them all if we can do it that
All right.
way, in one motion.
We can do that. I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 3rd, 6th, and 13th. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of October 3rd, October 6th, and October 13th as presented on pages 3 through 101. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item G is the building permits report. It is pages 102 through 105. It has been distributed and in your packets.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits, pages 102 to 105, as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Consent agenda. We have items A through F. It starts on page 106 with the beginning of the bills and going through page 124. A through F on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, items A through F as presented, as distributed on pages 106 through 124. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the regular agenda. First order of business is the City of West Fargo Draft Planning Needs Assessment. Be presented this evening by Mr. Aaron Nelson, Planning and Zoning Director for the City of West Fargo. It is in your packets on pages 125 through 141, and it has been distributed. Good evening, Mr. Nelson. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you, and good afternoon, Commissioners. So included in your meeting packet tonight is a draft copy of the West Fargo Planning Needs Assessment. I'd like to just take a few minutes here tonight and do a few things. First, update the Commission as to the status of this work and refresh your memories as to what exactly this work is all about. Also talk through some of the highlights of the needs assessment that's included in your packet there. And then lastly, to hear any feedback, either any feedback you have here tonight or as you have some time to think about this over the next few days. Just here to solicit your general, I guess, input and thoughts on the assessment itself. But to start with, I'd like to just go over some background in terms of this project and as to where we're at currently in this process. So just in terms of a quick refresher, the overall purpose of this effort is to identify and to clarify the city's planning and development related issues, and then to prioritize the areas of greatest need, recognizing that there's likely a lot more a need out there than there is potentially capacity or time to focus on any one given item. And then lastly, to build some consensus around any associated action steps geared towards addressing those prioritized needs that are found. And so with that purpose in mind, the process was initiated this past summer with the city's consultant reviewing existing plans and policies that we have, facilitating a series of staff discussions as well as a discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then also soliciting additional input through questionnaires, one of which I believe most of you were able to participate in. And so based on this feedback, the consultant team drafted the needs assessment, which is included in your packet there. The needs assessment document provides a brief overview of the process to date and then outlines and prioritizes the planning and development related needs that they've identified this far in the process. So with that, I'll kind of bring up the document itself here, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Hopefully you've all had a chance to kind of thumb through this, but I just wanted to jump ahead to some of the highlights here. The first roughly half of the document itself kind of goes through, again, some of the process to date, outlines some of the responses to the questionnaire, has a project timeline in there, and then some of the results of the staff discussions that took place earlier. But really, once you get to page roughly 7 or so, that's where the consultant lays out some of the issues and some of the feedback or some of the results of their findings so far. And what I'll highlight here is that in terms of the issues identified, they've chosen to break them up into 3 categories. There's nothing super special about these categories, but it's helpful in terms of framing some of this discussion. The first category is the vision and policy. These items relate to areas where additional detail and refinement of the city's vision and policies are needed. These might be things that were identified at a very high level, perhaps, in the West Fargo 2.0 comprehensive plan, but that warrant additional study or a deeper dive into some of those topic areas. Prioritization of these items were given to any items that had or were viewed to have economic development impacts. The second category is implementation. This primarily relates to ordinances and regulatory tools that are used to help enact some of those goals and visions of the city. And for the most part, these relate to development code updates. And then lastly, the last category is kind of a little bit of a catch-all category titled administration. These primarily relate to mostly staff level items that are either led by city administration or that are perhaps multi-departmental in nature. Things that staff is mainly either working on currently or may need to look at in the near future, with obviously some discussion from others or approval from the city commission or what have you. So those are the 3 categories here. Again, just wanted to highlight some of the ones that were kind of rising to the top, if you will. Included in the assessment here, they include this matrix with several columns and rows. The columns going across, or start with the needs on the left-hand side, just identifying what the need is. The second column talks about the status, whether it's something that's currently being worked on or something that will need to be perhaps looked at in the future. The third column there, priority, they've identified near-term priorities, mid-term priorities, and long-term priorities in terms of identifying a sense of urgency for those items. And lastly, the last column there is just a rationale. It's just a very high-level outline of why the city should look into some of these things. And so again, starting with that first category of vision and policy, some of the items that were identified was something like a lagoons master plan, looking into the lagoons, the potential for redevelopment there as the city works to decommission the lagoons. You may recall that the West Fargo 2.0 comprehensive plan identified, one scenario of what that might look like in the future, but really kind of left it off at that very high level view. And so the potential to take a deeper dive into what that might look like and what are the variety of options that the city might have since the city does own that property. Second one there, a downtown master plan update. There's a little typo there. The last time that downtown was really looked at in great detail was, I believe, roughly 12 years ago with the Cheyenne and Main Street plan. And a lot has changed since then. There's been some updated policy and things that came out of the West Fargo 2.0 plan that talks a lot about the downtown area and the potential economic engine that might be for the city. Third one there, growth areas master plan, mainly, mainly concerned with future growth areas outside of the existing corporate limits. Things like public arts and placemaking master plan. Let me grab my water here. You may recall a couple of months ago, the city applied for a grant for some of that work. Mobility master plan has to do with transportation. MetroCog is doing a lot of work already on a lot of those items. Neighborhoods and housing master plan. You may recall also that MetroCog is currently working on a metro area housing study right now. We should get some clearer idea of, or a more detailed picture of what some of those issues might be in terms of the larger housing market. And then a comprehensive plan update. It's good practice to keep your comprehensive plan up to date. Ours is fairly fresh, so we do a little time for something like that, and so that would be a long-term item. In terms of some of their implementation items there, again, mostly related to code updates. They're looking at some internal amendments to the Title IV zoning and subdivision regulations in the short term, potential sign code update, and then something longer term might be a unified development code update, which would be something more comprehensive in nature in terms of updating some of those development regulations to better align with the goals and policies of the city, specifically the West Fargo 2.0 comprehensive plan. And then lastly, the administration section. Again, these are kind of, I kind of refer to this as a catch-all category, but these are different topics and things that came up in some of their various conversations with city staff or the Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, a lot of these things are things that you're already aware of or things that are currently being discussed and worked on. And so I'll kind of just scroll through these ones, but will say too that all of these kind of interrelate with in one way or another. None of these are kind of standalone items, whatsoever. And then I'll draw your attention to the last couple of pages where the consultant starts to lay out some of the higher level priorities as they see them. And so again, looking at those three different categories, the vision and policy, the Lagoons Master Plan and Downtown Master Plan are kind of the 1 and 2 priorities there in terms of something that they would be recommending the city look at sooner rather than later, followed closely by the Growth Areas Master Plan, recognizing that we have a little bit of time during the construction of the FM diversion until much of the future growth area becomes fully or really developable. Implementation, again, looking at those short-term internal updates. And then the administration-wise, looking at the lagoon administrative strategy, the lagoon administrative strategy. Again, starting those discussions on what that might look like. Economic development strategy, and then core infrastructure rehab financial plan. They recognize that there is a core area plan in terms of what needs to be done. It's just a matter of figuring out a strategy for funding some of those projects. So with that, that's kind of the quick highlight version. You don't have to have any feedback tonight, but certainly if you have any reaction to this or if I think some things that we're looking for is how this strikes you. Does this generally align with what you feel the biggest priorities are, or is something missing here, or are some of these out of order? That's the kind of stuff that the consultant would like to hear from you all before they launch into the final phase of this project. The final phase of this project being a set of recommended action steps geared towards implementing and tackling some of this work in the near-term future. So with that, I'm going to stop talking before my voice gives out on me. But happy to answer
Mr.
questions you have.
Comments? Commissioner George?
Yeah, when I was reading through this, I was pretty excited about what I was reading here. I mean, there's so many things that this hits the nail on the head as far as things that I personally think are really important for the city. Even just very specific projects. One that I've talked about several times is that adding that pedestrian walkway on 9th Street East, between Main and 12th. I think that's so important, and that was right there. I was excited to see that. Discussions on the library, the police department, the lagoon strategy. Those things I think are so important, and I'm really excited to see more detailed plans going into the future, and just looking forward to see all these things come into fruition. I think are so needed for the community. So I'm excited about what you have here, and I think we're going the right direction.
Commissioners, please, Commissioner Anderson.
This is a lot of good information. I like that it's going to help kind of be a guiding path, if you will, for the process through the city as we grow to the north and kind of do our kind of internal, if you will, growth around the core area and other areas. So I really like this.
I think the document is well done. I do particularly like the page that has the high importance and low urgency, or high importance, high urgencies, and how you not only have you categorized them as to, it gives us some clarity there. Obviously, we can move them around as the commission sees fit and or staff. Also, with regard to MetroCog, a number of us from the city participated in their housing evaluation last week, and looking forward to that report too. So there's a lot of good folks that are engaged in and talking about the communities as a whole, as a region. But this is a welcome report for the city of West Fargo. I look forward to digging into it deeper. It's well done. Anyone else? This is for information only this evening, commissioners. I'm not asking for a action item unless you deem it appropriate. All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is a resolution approving the parking reduction for the Lights District. Mr. John Shockley, City Attorney, City of West Fargo. It is in your packets. It is on pages 142 through 145. Good evening, Mr. Shockley. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. It's a relatively simple resolution tonight. City staff has been working with Epic and West Fargo Events regarding a modification to the minimum parking limits for the lights. During events, we have determined that there's other ways that people can be transported into the lights facility rather than parking there. And the feeling was that strict adherence to parking standards wasn't necessarily required at this time. There's also some additional parking that may be planned in the future. And so this was a short-term way to address some of those parking issues so that wasn't strictly required when events are happening out there. And some of the items that can occur is working with our partners regarding busing people in, having parking at some of the school facilities, having parking across the street, those sorts of issues. And so staff is recommending that we do a waiver of the strict parking requirements for the lights. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner George.
Okay, so I admit this one makes me nervous because, so I'm wondering who is asking for this specifically and why do they want this specifically? Because I've been hearing that there's issues with parking, that there isn't enough parking, that residents aren't having parking during events, and now there's that new building where there's going to be a lot more residents, so that makes me nervous. I don't know how people feel about getting bused to events, so I'm nervous on this one, I guess.
Yeah, so great question. It's a joint request by both the city staff and the developers out there just for the events. There are some plans for additional parking in the future. It's just at this time, with everything that's going on with the economy, supply, projects, the parking isn't quite complete yet. There's also parking that's allowed across the street at the school parking grounds, which is currently actually being used. And so what we're saying is that if you follow the letter of the ordinance, it may restrict the ability to complete some of the projects out there. And so from a timing perspective, we want the ability to complete the projects and then finish the parking, knowing that the stress for parking is during events, that we can work with our partners to have different parking in the area. And I don't know if any of the commissioners that are on West Fargo events have any additional comments regarding that.
Commissioner Simmons.
I guess I'll make one as a commissioner, but also the president of West Fargo events. I understand your concern, Mandy, but our position is to a bigger extreme. You go to Minneapolis, you go to a Twins game or to a Vikings game, you don't park there. Normally you take a bus or you take a shuttle. Even Shields has buses running from bars and stuff, you know, and that's kind of our vision as well. We plan on doing the same type of program. So that's the way I look at it. If you went to one of the cities or any game in Seattle, I've been there, you usually got a shuttle somewhere. You don't get to park right out front. In North Dakota, we're used to parking right out front. That's the problem that we have.
So for events, are you looking at reserving the parking garage specifically for the residents? And if you're attending the event, you have to go park someplace else? Or like how is that going to be coordinated?
I can't speak on that because I think that would be something that the city would have more involvement in just as much as us. Because they just
I don't
manage
want the
it.
residents have to get stuck shuttling.
Exactly. Well, most of the residents have either underground parking or parking permits out there.
Okay.
You know, that live in those places. So this is more for the people that are coming there. It's the only time this ever happens is honestly is when there's a major event. That's 6 times a year, and even then, the school is nice enough for us to give us their huge parking ramp. So we don't have a problem with the parking. It's just that the law, John says, we don't have enough, but there's actually ample parking if we take everything into consideration.
Something else he kind of alluded to was that for projects happening right now, the reduction would come in handy, but then later in the future, there'd be more parking? Am I understanding that, or?
There's more parking planned
Okay.
as we do the next development out there, or the phase, I should say, not we, but whoever may do it. We don't know yet.
Okay.
We're still on that committee. We haven't even met yet. But yeah, there's definitely will be a lot more parking out there.
Okay.
Commissioner George's concerns are very valid. We've all experienced that, and so the city continues to work on a plan that's part of this mutual agreements that we have. The West Fargo School District has been amazing partners, community partners, in allowing us to do what we did, particularly during cruise nights when we had to have them out there, and the great corporate partners that we had even across the street on 32nd, the Hooligans people, and all of those people were very receptive to allowing people to park there. And of course, it benefits them as business people, but the whole area has been very conducive to great cooperation. So, but your concerns are certainly on point, Commissioner. There's no doubt about that. Any additional questions for Mr. Shockley on this? Anyone? We are looking for an action item here to approve the resolution of the parking reduction for the Lights District as presented this evening by Mr. Shockley.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the resolution approving the parking reduction for the Lights District as presented this evening on pages 142 through 145 in your packet. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3 is project number 1343, a sanitary lift station system rehabilitation. SA 2, 3, 12, and 15. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer, City of West Fargo. The purpose of this presentation this evening is to approve a task order number 63-1 for basic services, pages 146 through 166 in your packet. Good evening, Mr. Hansen. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner President Ardis and Commissioners. As he mentioned in your packet is Task Order 63-1 for basic services. This is the ongoing rehabilitation of the city's existing lift stations that we are undertaking with the goal of rehabilitating 4 lift stations every year. We've already done a couple of those projects. At the last meeting, the Commission approved the report and authorized the consultant to put together this task order to be brought back for approval, as well as the design, which we're not done with the design yet, but this is the task order for doing those. This basic services task order follows under their standard MSA task orders, and with that, I would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Hanson? No?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. It's been moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Again, it's been moved and seconded to approve project number 1343, a sanitary lift system rehabilitations 2, 3, 12, and 15, and approve the task order number 63-1 for basic services. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next order of business on the regular agenda is item number 4. This is a sidewalk improvement district number 6056, 2021 walks. Mr. Dustin Scott, Assistant City Administrator. The purpose of this discussion is the final approval of assessments. It's on pages 167 through 180. Mr. Scott, good evening. Welcome.
Well, good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. And please bear with me one last time. I know we've had our fill of special assessments these past couple weeks, but I promised this would be the last district in 2022 anyway. So really this project started in 2020 when we brought forward an engineer's report to look at the sidewalks in neighborhoods. This is where when there are undeveloped properties within an established neighborhood, the city creates a district, gives property owners time to either install their own sidewalk, or the city will come and do that and then levy the special assessment. So last year we started construction, as you can see in the table here. Based on the second, there was 2 engineers' reports really. The amendment to the original report was done in April of 21. You can see here that the estimated cost for special assessment properties was $325,000. All said and done last year, when we got through with construction, we tallied up about $116,000 of the total project cost as being levied out in special assessments through a number of properties that decided not to install their own sidewalk. So tonight, what we are doing is just approving the final list as presented in your packet. These are the properties and their respective special assessments amounts. I would certainly turn over any legal assessment type questions over to our attorney, Mr. Shockley. Other than that, though, I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Commissioners? All right. Again, I asked the commission for a motion. They're looking for a final approval of these assessments.
Just one question.
Please, Commissioner Olson.
Do we need to have a public hearing on this or not, since it's,
No, and that's where, yep,
I just want to make sure that we didn't do something out of order here.
And certainly I would want to, especially with all of the heavy special assessment agenda packets lately, the process for a sidewalk district is much different than the traditional special assessments that you've seen these past few meetings. So there is, just again, a different process, not quite the same. For example, this does not involve the Special Assessment Commission at all.
Okay. So if that's the case, then I'll make the motion to approve the assessment list.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. A second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Simmons, second. It's been moved and second. Is there any discussion? So, to be clear, Mr. Scott, on all of these lots, the landowners were given the opportunity to go out and negotiate their own contractors to do these, and these are the ones that chose not to, and thus, we're just assessing it to their properties. That
That
correct?
is, yep, that is correct, President
Okay,
Ardis.
just
Yep.
wanted that clarified for the public. I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Project number 5 is a project number 2268, 52nd Avenue West, Phase 2. Mr. Dustin Scott, Assistant City Administrator for the City of West Fargo. Purpose of this presentation is to approve an agreement with the City of Fargo and Cass County for upcoming construction. It is on pages 182 through 204 in your packet. Again, welcome, Mr. Scott.
Thank you again, Commissioner President Ardis and Commissioners. So the first phase of the 52nd Avenue project, we're all familiar with it, finished up back in 2020, and that really was, for the most part, all in the city of Fargo except for the very westerly portion of that project. What we're moving forward with today with Project 2268 is basically Phase 2, where they will extend the remaining urbanization of 52nd Avenue past Cheyenne Street through the roundabout at 52nd Avenue. So this joint powers agreement here is with Fargo, Cass County, and West Fargo for the purpose of authorizing the joint and cooperative exercise of power, common to all three agencies. It's a pretty standard form of an agreement. It has been reviewed by our attorney, Mr. John Shockley. Getting into the finances a little bit here, the total project cost is estimated at $20 million. West Fargo's share at this point in time is estimated to be about $3 million. There was DOT funding on in the project. The agreement that's attached into your packet does provide a little more detail on all of the cost shares and how this is all going to be split between these three agencies. And I'm going to go to the last page just to show a map here for visual purposes. So again, really where the project left off last time was 4th Street, or it's 63rd Street South in Fargo, 4th Street East in West Fargo, really the entrance into the East McMahon's development, and will include modifications to the roundabout, where we will be adding additional capacity for traffic. There is certainly a lot more traffic coming out of West Fargo neighborhoods here as we matured, heading down to the new schools in Horace. So we are anticipating a lot more traffic on 52nd Avenue and Cheyenne Street here, so increasing the capacity at the roundabout. I guess with that, I think I've touched on the highlights here. And again, this table that you see here just summarizes the cost split between the three agencies. And again, West Fargo's share is just shy of $3 million. As noted on the first page of your agenda packet, we are proposing that this be funded through with sales tax. We're not creating a special assessment district to fund this. We would be putting this into our 5-year CIP, which we are currently modifying for the years 2023 through 2027. So at this point, I will stand for any questions.
Commissioner Olson.
So County 17 comes up to the roundabout at 52nd Avenue, and that becomes Cheyenne Street going north. Does not Horace have any cost included in this? I didn't see them listed on here, because that would be in the city of Horace, would it not?
Good question, Commissioner Olson. Yes. So at this point, the county still has full ownership and maintenance responsibilities, but what is included in this agreement, and it is attached in here, and I'll just scroll right to it, is the agreement between Cass County and the city of Horace for the transfer of ownership and maintenance. Here it is right here. This is a memorandum of understanding regarding Cass County Highway 6 and Cass County Highway 17. And so in here, it talks about the transfer of ownership to the city of Horace. Now, the financing of it, you know, the county is picking up what would be considered Horace's share.
Okay.
And whether or not Horace is gonna reimburse the county when they transfer the ownership, I don't know the full details of that, but it is being accounted for with Cass County's
Okay,
cost share.
thank you.
Mr. Scott, this was going to be a big disruption of a lot of our citizens. What is the timeline of the Fargo portion and the new bridge, basically? It's a box culvert, or it's a replacement of the bridge. Is this, do you have an estimated timeline on the construction?
Yes, what I can tell you in terms of the schedule is that the tentative start date would be as soon as weather permits this spring of '23. The DOT is going to open bids in November, so that'll give the winter months to formulate the contracts, execute the contracts, and then as soon as weather permits, work will start on 52nd Avenue here this spring. Now, the work that's going to be done to the south that Cass County is doing in replacing the bridge on County 17, I believe that's estimated to start in August. So there will be a point in time next year where there will be quite a bit of disruption to the traveling public. There are preliminary detour plans already in place. I know that between Fargo and Cass County, they have certainly been engaging the school districts to understand the impacts to the Horace Middle School and high schools. But again, as more information comes forward, and when I say that, I mean certainly acquiring contractors, having contractors in place, we will ramp up the communication efforts and the coordination with the schools.
So on, you know, you're referencing the bridge on 17. What type of work will be done on the bridge at 52nd between Fargo and West Fargo? Is there any work to be done there other than resurfacing the roadway?
No, it'll be a full bridge replacement.
That one too. So there's two bridge replacements.
Yes.
Yes, that's the point I want the public to understand. I understood that, but I wanted you to say it to the public. Both bridges, the 52nd Bridge and the County 17 Bridge over the Cheyenne River, both of those bridges will be replaced. So have you seen what the detour route is going to look like to try and get those residents to West Fargo Public Schools?
I've seen preliminary
Okay.
concepts, yes, and I do want to just, for the sake of understanding, the other bridge to the south of here, that is 100% a Cass County project,
Right.
that is not included with this project. So there'll be two different contractors. It'll be similar to what we experienced during Cheyenne Street reconstruction, where Phase 1 of 52nd, we have multiple projects going on in the area. So at this point, we have some rough concepts, but until we have both contractors acquired and really start to engage those efforts of coordination, at this point, I can just give you some high-level concepts of.
I just wanted the clarification, because when we referenced the bridge, you were talking the one on County 17 South, but the bridge on 52nd will also be out and under construction. And those neighborhoods, the Wilds, 20th, 19th, 20th, 21st editions, you know, everything out at there at the Wilds is all going to be headed north,
Absolutely.
you know, if they're going east. I mean, okay,
And
good.
and I can tell you that
But you're right, we're gonna have to have a lot of communications going on to the public.
My, and personally with the bus routes, my dad drives bus out in this area, so I've at least got the ear of one bus driver in this particular area, and certainly in starting to have those conversations of, you understand the impacts and how far around they're gonna have to go. And I will not sugarcoat that. It'll be disruptive.
Yes, sir. All right, Commissioners, additional questions for Mr. Scott? Again, we're on item number 5, Project 2268. And that's to approve the joint powers agreement between the City of Fargo and Cass County Commission and the City of West Fargo.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with the City of Fargo and Cass County on Project 2268. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. As previously discussed at the beginning of the meeting, we had some amendments to our agenda. Item 6A is a request from the Fleet and Facilities Manager, Mr. Tony Silbernailer, and Mrs. Fisk is going to assist with this one. Mrs. Fisk has provided us with the documentation with regard to our Fleet and Facilities Manager's request. Mrs. Fisk, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. What you have before you is a bid that was received by our Fleet and Facilities Director. And what it is originally when you approved the budget, we had put in there that we needed to order a Vector in 2022 to get it by 2024. And so the expenditure was going to be in 2024. Well, Tony was able to get a hold of companies, and there are just like 3 slots open to be able to get one, and we'd be able to have it to do work next summer. So that would be in 2023. And he was able to get it at $25,000 less than the potential budgeted amount in '24. So this would be requesting an amendment to the 2023 budget to purchase the Vector for the price you have on there, the $675,323.86. And because this fund because the sewer fund does not have adequate revenues to cover a purchase such as this, I would request that you either take it out of general fund reserve or from capital improvement sales tax, if you so choose.
Mr. Simmons.
Thank you. Tina, would we have to amend the budget for this? And if we do, does that change the mill levy at all?
No, this would not change the mill levy. With the options that I gave you for where the funding would come from, it would not affect anything. The mill's already set. That was sent in already.
So what were the 2 options again? Which funds?
The 2 that I gave just as a suggestion was use general fund reserve dollars, because a lot of times if we have rollover funds that don't get spent, that's where we put the money, or capital improvement sales tax.
As the commissioner that carries the administrative budget, I would respectfully request that if the commission approves this evening, that we take this from reserve funds rather than the
I agree.
sales tax dollars. Again, I've had this discussion with Mrs. Fisk, and she's guided me through this, and that's certainly where I think we wanted to go, where we would want to go, rather than capital improvement sales tax. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't think we want to continue to use our sales tax for this. Let's take it out of the reserve. I agree.
All right, very good. So, commissioners, additional questions from Mrs. Fisk to this request?
My motion would be to approve and take it out of the reserve fund.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the amended item brought forth this evening by Mrs. Fisk from Fleet and Facilities Management for the purchase of a Vector and a new truck to go underneath it for $675,323.86. And I get a kick out of their pricing. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? And again, out of reserve funds. Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. I will notify him so that he can move.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Item B, 6B, is we're going to welcome to the podium Mr. Dan Fuller, Fire Chief for the City of West Fargo. With regard to some discussions on the fire hall, we have an amendment or to a change order, if you will, and he will share with us how this came about. Chief Fuller.
Thank you,
welcome.
Commissioner President, artists, members of the commission. In front of you, first off, I'll apologize for the late delivery of this. This came across my desk on Friday, trying to get ahead of all these change orders, and this was something that Commission President Artis and I had talked about previously, that if it was over a set amount, would bring this to the commission. Not all of these are going to be wins, but this one is a win for us. So the way this worked out is we had a allotment in our budget for the project for acoustical ceilings for $222,000. We were not able to open the bid from the sole bidder because there was an issue with the bond and the contractor's license being stapled. on the
Very
outside of the
specific
envelope.
instructions of how they have to label the envelope,
Yeah.
and they blew it.
Yep, very specific. So our next option was to leave it unfunded, or leave it unassigned, keep it as an allowance in the budget, and then find someone to do the work later. So we went to Grafstrom Construction, and they have our contract for all the carpentry, millwork, doors, and that kind of stuff in this project. So they were solicited to give a request for proposal. They did. They came back with a $260,000 number. So we put it into a change order, and it went through the system. Now, part of what we also did with them was ask for any value engineering that they could do on that number to get us to where we need to be. They came back with a value engineered number of $135,000. And so that is a savings of $87,000 off our budget allotment for acoustical ceiling packaging for the entire building. So my recommendation, or I guess my request from the commission tonight is a approval of the value engineering scope of work addition for $135,000 for Grafstrom Construction, and that would be that would go through Kraus Anderson, and they would make the final change order, which would still be another document coming later.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for the Chief? Commissioner Simmons.
Can we just relish this for a few minutes? We're actually saving some money here tonight. I mean, can we just enjoy that?
Well,
Thank you.
mark the calendar for sure.
Yeah, I would, you know, I could point out, and this is just for gee whiz information, but we have had a number of change order requests come through, and they've been small numbers. But with this savings, you know, total, we're looking at a negative number for our total overages so far. We're negative $2,000. With this is a big piece of the pie coming back. And we had actually figured that into the budget, that there was going to be a large number of value engineered items that would come forward. So we're doing pretty good.
As Chief indicated, he meets regularly with the contractors, and as the progressive build is going on. But I'd like to say that, you know, that I have been kept in as the commissioner that holds the administrative portfolio, and Mrs. Fisk and I both have been kept in it. And then when we get these changes, because you hold the portfolio for the fire department, I've asked Chief Fuller to keep you informed. And not to say that all the commissioners shouldn't be, but, you know, I want to commend you and Mrs. Fisk for your review of these things and keeping this within budget. So realize we're early on in the construction phase, and things may change, but there's good work being done, and we're grateful for that. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. George, is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the change order as brought forth by Grafstrom Construction LLC as presented by Chief Fuller this evening at a figure of $135,000. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is a pay study request for discussion by Commissioner Mark Simmons. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm bringing this back for reconsideration because when I cut it from the budget, I did not realize that 5 years ago when we did the last one, that we had made a commitment or a promise to our employees that we would do another study. And I guess I either forgot or didn't realize that, and I don't want to break that promise, so I would like to bring it back for an actionable motion.
When you say bring it back, we're going to, you're asking to put that back into the 2023 budget, correct?
Well, I was hoping Tina could probably find that 25,000 somewhere else where we wouldn't have to amend the budget again. I'm sure we, rather than amend the budget, I don't want to amend the budget, but if we have to, we have to, but if it passes, but I would rather find that money from a reserve or something.
Mrs. Fisk?
Judy's not here, our finance director, but the best place, not to sound like a broken record, to take that from would be the general fund reserve, since it's such a small amount. And that does require a budget amendment approval, and then we just track that.
Okay.
General fund reserve is where you would suggest, okay. Commissioner?
I'm just confused here, since there were three commissioners here that voted for that budget change back on October 3rd. Are you then allowed to bring it back, or is it the one that voted against it?
Parliamentary, excuse me.
I just want to make the clarification.
Great question. Great question, Commissioner Olson, and I didn't mean to cut you off. My apologies. Anybody that's on the prevailing side can bring something back. If you, so if somebody's on the losing side, I can't come up with the word for the other one, but if if you're on the prevailing side, you can always bring something back for reconsideration.
I just wanted clarification.
So, parliamentarily wise, Commissioner Simmons can do that. I do need a second.
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to reinstate the pay study and fund it with reserve funds as outlined by Mrs. Fisk for, help me, am I in 2022 or am I in 2023? 2023? Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Anderson?
Can I ask what this study would include? What would be inclusive of this study? Is it just pay, or is it benefits as a whole?
Pay, well, it's everything, pay, benefits, if I'm correct.
It's pay, benefits, and review of all of our job descriptions.
The original one, Commissioner Rob, nothing has changed.
Would that include insurance and all that looking at different insurance quotes and things like that?
All benefits, yep, so
All
PERS,
inclusive, I would assume.
health, life, all the things.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 7 is City Administrator's Report. Tina Fisk, City Administrator, City of West Fargo.
Good evening again, Commission President and Commissioners. I only have a couple quick things. First of all, tomorrow, Mandy and Mark and staff, Commissioner George, Commissioner Simmons, and staff will have our first child care meeting to discuss directions and what we can do or try to. Other than that, I was going to address, last meeting, I've been asked to address why I left the October 3rd Commission meeting early. And I want to be honest with you, the presentation of the changes to the budget caught me totally off guard. I felt that the items removed targeted and took away opportunities that would affect the majority, if not all, of our employees and affect morale. The tone of the meeting was extremely uncomfortable, and I felt it was in my best interests to leave the meeting at that point. I in no way meant to disrespect the city commission or the decision that you make. It's your decision to make. I just left out of respect for myself and staff. So, thank you. Do you have anything for me?
Anything for Commissioner, or for Mrs. Fisk? Excuse me, Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional correspondence, Mrs. Fisk? No, other than what. Okay. I showed Mrs. Fisk an item. I had some local residents reach out regarding the animal homeless shelter up north by the old Yonker Farms. I understand that the West Fargo Police Department takes them to the West Fargo Animal Hospital at first blush, but once those animals have been in there for so many days, then they get transferred up there. So the city of West Fargo, in actuality, is using that facility to some degree. And their discussion was with their board chairman, a board member, and their executive director. And last year, 19 animals went to that shelter from the city of West Fargo, and they were looking for the possibility of a very nominal type of participation fee. I've turned that request over to Mrs. Fisk. Upon the return of the chief or the command staff, will get a better understanding of how that process all works. But it was a nominal number, but we'll certainly bring it back before the commission if we have a recommendation. That's a piece of correspondence that I had last week. Commissioners, any non-agenda items you'd like to bring forward this evening?
Yes.
Commissioner.
This is going to be difficult for me, but I was disappointed to read about Commissioner Simmons going to the media to express his desire to possibly reprimand our city administrator for leaving the October 3rd meeting early. What the article failed to show was the hostile environment that was created just prior to that budget vote. So let me read from the City of West Fargo Employee Handbook, which was effective on October 1 of 2020. Standards of behavior. The City of West Fargo is committed to creating a respectful and ethical workplace for all of its employees, and we as commissioners are considered one of the employees. A respectful and ethical workplace is viewed as one that promotes honesty and a healthy and positive work environment in which employees treat one another with professionalism and respect. Behaviors and actions that do not foster a respectful and ethical workplace include, but are not limited to, conduct, using abuses of threatening language toward another employee, unprofessional behavior such as raising a voice, ridiculing, belittling, blaming, gossiping, making assumptions, or embarrassing employees, engaging in hostile or intimidating interactions. Any unethical, improper act or behavior that has an adverse impact on the city or its employees. Unlawful harassment is a conduct that has the purpose or effect of creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment and has the purpose or the effect of substantially or unreasonably interfering with that individual's work performance. It also includes, but is not limited to, comments or other threatening, hostile, or intimidating acts. So it may be true that Commissioner Simmons asked our city administrator to make certain changes in the 2023 budget. But however, I want to remind all of us up here that we only represent one vote, 20% of the commission. So without the full support of the entire commission, none of those changes could be made. On August 1 of 2020, we approved the preliminary budget, and Commissioner Simmons voted in favor of that passage. There have been 2 months for Commissioner Simmons to present his proposal to the full commission. However, apparently he went directly to the city administrator to make his requests. When they hadn't been done, the hostile environment was created at our October 3rd meeting. Our city administrator and human resource director were the recipients of that hostility, and so rather than engage in a similar fashion, they diffused the situation by leaving the chamber. Based on what had just transpired, I wouldn't consider leaving a hostile environment disrespectful. I strongly feel that Commissioner Simmons did not adhere to our standards of conduct and owes both Tina and Jenna a public apology. Furthermore, we have witnessed and allowed such behavior in the past, and I am not going to tolerate it anymore. Any commissioner should create such an environment during the commissioner meeting, I'm prepared to ask the mayor to put the meeting in recess and have the commissioner escorted from the chambers. I yield back to the mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson.
Of course, I want to speak.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I was not in a hostile situation, I don't think. I asked things to be cut, and I left it at that. I brought no names up, neither one of them. All I said is I want this cut. I didn't start the hostile situation. So, second of all, if you read, not that it matters because I didn't, but if you read that, you didn't read far enough into that manual, because if you go to the back of that employee manual, it says commissioners are exempt from sexual harassment and all that stuff. So you better read a little further, Commissioner Olson. We just buried the hatchet here, and now I think you want to bring it back again. That's very unfortunate, because it was all done with tonight. And now you just, by bringing this all up, you just brought it right back up to the media again. So thank you for that.
What it says here is elected and appointed officials are not subject to disciplinary action.
Well, that's exactly what you want to do to me, isn't it?
No.
What did you say when you want to escort me from the,
I just said that if anybody should engage in hostile,
that's discipline action to the commissioner, whether it's me or anybody
a
else.
reprimand is not a censure, is just to diffuse
Well, it's-
the situation.
We're going to recognize one and then the other.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons has the floor.
As a commissioner, I'm voted by the people, not by you. And I realize what you're saying, 20%, but I represent all the people. And if I feel something's wrong, I'm going to say it. And I think any other commissioner here is going to say the same thing. If you don't like it, too bad. That's the way it is. I'll be as nice to you as you are to me. But I felt no reason you had to talk to me tonight. So I'm through.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner.
Can I ask you a question? Did you sit there and yell and point your finger at Tina that night?
Not until Tina started to debate with me.
But you
Started to
but you-
question what I did. I don't know if I
voice-
pointed. I don't know if I don't know. And again, it doesn't, it was over, Brad. And now you bring it back up again. It's sad.
The 2023 budget process is over, but the conduct I am not going to tolerate anymore. That's what I want to get across.
At the prerogative of the chair, if I feel that the conversation is becoming hostile, I have the authority to stop the conversation. Now, with all due respect to Commissioner Olson and to Commissioner Simmons, Commissioner Simmons had a very pointed argument that he wanted to make. And I did not believe it was hostile. I believe it was maybe a heated and a bit elevated. I think there was some frustration that came out that some of these things had been discussed earlier. But if anybody failed 2 weeks ago, it was me. And I have to accept that responsibility. Obviously, with the discussion that we're having up here with the two commissioners and conversations that I've had with staff, I failed you, and it won't happen again. So with that being said, we have a great city. We have a great city commission here. We have some amazing staff that we work with every darn day. And we need to get this behind us, and we need to move forward. We need to be respectful of one another. We can all differ in opinions. Heck, how many times did Dustin Scott, as a city administrator, bring forth a 40% allowance to contingencies, which just about created a heart attack with me every dang time he did it. And we still laugh about it between the two of us. You know, there can be differences. There absolutely can. Because as Commissioner Simmons said, we've all been elected because of whom we are, what our passions are for this city, and what we believe in. But we got to rein it in. We got to rein it in when sometimes that passion gets a hold of us. So, anyone else like to make any comments? And again, last week I failed, and I apologize to everyone for that. That being said, Commissioner Simmons.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson.
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.